Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the HooperCast this week. Quick note before we get started. Had some technical issues on this episode. Tried to use a different recorder. I don't think it's going to work out. So hoping to deliver the episode to you. But the quality of it may not be what you're accustomed to. So bear with us. We're getting it sorted out. And enjoy the episode. All right, Dustin. Well, God willing, we are here. We're here this week.
Yes. At the very least, you have my side of the conversation.
Welcome to the HooperCast Movie Hour, everybody. It's I, Connor, and he, Dustin, and this is episode 296 of the HooperCast Movie Hour. Thanks for being with us this week. We appreciate it. We were off last week, doing stuff, living our lives, and most importantly, watching movies.
Yes,
I suppose that's most important.
Sure.
But yeah, so here we are. Talk about some stuff. I'm going to get right into it. Dustin, we usually catch up when we've been off, but we spent a lot of time troubleshooting stuff this morning, so I just want to get to straight to that their old news there.
Mm-hmm.
The first article I have to talk about, and these are kind of large discussion pieces somewhat, but it's one of those interesting scenarios where there's not much else to be said. Well, except for where the F are my tabs. Here we go. Couldn't find my tabs. Anyways, here's the first story here. And oh goodness gracious, yes, please keep sharing. This is going great. First story I've got here is by the Hollywood Reporter. And it's a little mini profile of an article, but a very damning article. Lots of damning stuff coming lately from Ray Fisher, the actor behind Cyborg from the Justice League, and also other things. But he is most known by that role, and obviously from all the controversy surrounding WarnerMedia lately. The title is Ray Fisher opens up about Justice League, Joss Whedon, and Warner's. So he has been, over the past year, kind of bringing to light a lot of issues with WarnerMedia, Warner Brothers, the leadership over at Warner's, and for the most part, a lot of those people have kind of moved out of the leadership. They've vacated their roles, or they've sort of been quietly pushed out of the company.
Mm-hmm.
I would have people check this out. I mean, it's a great article. It's a good read. It's extremely informative. It's long. It's detailed. It's good reporting, and pretty much takes you through everything that he isn't saying or wasn't explicitly saying during a lot of that period with his cryptic tweets and his reluctance to sort of name names and name witnesses that he didn't want to speak on behalf of. But it's a great article. You read this, right?
I did.
What did you think of it?
Yeah, I think it's a good article. And like you said, obviously he's not going to go into too much depth because, there's some sensitive information here. And I think he still hopes for some more investigation and, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But on mind of things, like there is a hunger, like I have a hunger to hear all the details. So I really would love to hear them, but I respect the fact that he's not showing or not revealing all of that yet. And I think that speaks a lot to his character, that he's not willing to say like, oh, Ben Affleck thinks so too.
I agree.
He holds that back, and he's like, if Ben Affleck wants to say something, then he can say it.
Ben Affleck will say something.
Right. So like, I think that that's pretty noble of him. And I have no reason to distrust this guy. Like, obviously, like, to me, one of the big things is what happened to his character within the context of that story was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And so it's like already there's injury. and then you're going to add all of this insult on top of it by having him deal with these people who shouldn't be in leadership roles. Then he's going to stake his career on this, because that's not the way that somebody should be treated. And just because you're a newcomer doesn't mean you're entitled to poorer treatment than someone like Ben Affleck, who's a big moneymaker. I gotta give respect to him. He's doing things the right way, and he tried to go the HR route. Didn't quite work.
Yep.
So now he's going to use Twitter to get his point across. And but even so, he isn't out to make headlines by just saying like, I think Henry Cavill has something to say, and then everything that Henry Cavill does, he gets questions about it, right?
Right.
Or he's forced to make a statement that he's not ready to make, and so I got to respect him.
I do as well. I'm extremely impressed with him as a person going through this whole circus and, coming out the other side of it. I mean, like you said, like he tried to go through the proper channels, was not rewarded for it, was sort of semi taken seriously, a lot of facade. Oh, we'll get an investigator. Oh, but it's this one who may not treat the situation with the gravity it deserves, or follow up, or
be unbiased.
Or be unbiased. But due diligence, was definitely in question. And the only person in this article that I feel like might deserve a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt that it mentions is Jeff Johns, who is accused of either attitudes or actions that sort of aren't stellar during this whole period. But everything that his rep said on his behalf made sense to me. It didn't come off like, oh, let's say the thing to make it go away. They were like, Jeff is himself like a Lebanese, like he's of mixed race. Both of his wives have been of mixed race. Here's Jeff's record as a progressive writer in the comic books. And of course, Jeff Johns we know to be, creatively at least, like someone who is, of sound mind generally. So but there's something that Ray Fisher does say in the article that really sums up his attitude and what I think should be most people's attitudes toward this whole thing in terms of like, whose fault is this? And he thinks, he says, I think a lot of decisions were made in fear. I think a lot of people were just afraid to lose their jobs. So they were just making a bunch of stupid decisions that didn't have anything to do with the story or this movie. But this movie was a significant benchmark for WarnerMedia as it was being sold to Viacom. Who was it?
Yeah, Viacom. Yeah.
So they were in the middle of like an acquisition, a merger, and this film was under a lot of pressure to succeed. And another person I think comes out looking really good from this article, and the next one we're going to talk about, is Zack Snyder, who seemed to have been on his side. And here's my mea culpa. I am sorry to Zack Snyder for dumbing down your personality into just a silly bro director, because he isn't. And especially after reading these articles, I have a whole different opinion of him. He apparently is very good at navigating studio notes the way you would want from your director, like going like, oh, okay, yeah, sounds good, and then just not shooting it, or or just or putting a reference to the booyah catchphrase just on a poster somewhere, like, oh, there you go, Snyder tried everything to get these silly notes pseudo addressed, but really just avoided.
Well, and let me talk too about that booyah moment, which I thought this article spoke to very well. Like, Ray Fisher was very very articulate about this issue, which was great, because here's the thing. Like, when I first heard it, I'm like, look, just say booyah, right? Like, that's
Right.
Cyborg's thing. Like,
Yeah.
okay, but the truth is, it's Cyborg's thing in one particular version of the character,
Yes.
not in all particular versions. Although I think it probably carried over to the comics after it was introduced in the show.
Perhaps, but it did not originate in the comics.
Correct. It originated in the TV series.
Yeah.
Now, I love it. And if I had been writing it, I probably would have written it. But here's the thing. What Ray Fisher says here is so smart, which is, of all of these characters, why do you give the black guy the catchphrase?
Yep.
In a long history where black characters have been reduced to stereotypes and catchphrases.
Yep.
Why give it to him? Now, I completely get it. To be fair, in the show that catchphrase is from, they pretty much all the characters have a catchphrase, but in this, it would have been just him. So yeah, I completely get it on his side, like 100% now. I completely understand that. And that's not something that I thought of before. I just thought, just say the line. It's cool. It would make me go in the theater. so just say it. But now I'm like, yeah, you know what? Don't say it. Not in this version.
Yeah.
Maybe one day there will be a live action Cyborg who says it, and that's fine.
Right.
But it shouldn't be treated as a catchphrase. And that's how this was coming across, was this is going to be a catchphrase moment.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way.
It's a great read. People should check it out. It's certainly illustrative of, I mean, in a way, you could see this whole situation and go like, hey, I'm not surprised at all, because this seems like typical studio behavior. But like,
Yeah.
You don't want to think that. I mean, studios are full of people who, at the end of the day, are hopefully in movies because they want to make good art, good stories, and sometimes it's a job, and sometimes you're answerable to people who couldn't care less about the story, including the guy who said, what if the CEO of Viacom has a little kid who likes Cyborg saying booyah, and I'll lose my job if he doesn't say booyah. It's like, that's ridiculous that was even said to him, allegedly.
Yeah, right. Correct.
So, I love the article. I'm proud of Ray Fisher, and I'll keep him on my radar in the future, because he seems to be a man of character, and considering he didn't have a big name to support that character, that he just did all this just on his will. But I don't know if his parents are still alive, but they ought to be proud of him.
Yeah, well, it's like we've said, he's staking his career on it, which gives credence to the allegations.
Yes.
But I think he's going to come out pretty well in this, because not only did we now see like what he was fighting for was a vastly superior film, but also he's fighting for something that's now proving to be completely and totally true. And I think that he's going to come out looking pretty good. And I think there's going to be a slew of directors who are going to want to work with him, simply because they expect that he's going to hold people accountable.
Yep.
And because he has proven his character through this whole ordeal. My hope is, look, I'm not a big fan of the Zack Snyder stuff. We've talked about it. Like, I'm not a huge fan of it, but at the end of the day, I would love to see Ray Fisher play Cyborg again. And I don't know that we'll ever get that opportunity. But like at the end of Justice League, he seemed like a character who could be taken anywhere. Could he be like a happy-go-lucky cyborg in the next film? Sure, maybe. Like he could be. But I don't know that Warner's will give him that chance. And that kind of sucks. But at the same time, I wish him well on his career, whatever it is that he does.
All right. Another article we're talking about is this this article from Vanity Fair, also about Justice League. This is Justice League screenwriter Chris Terrio is super pissed off, is the name of the article. And it's essentially him going like, hey, all those story problems that Justice League had wasn't my fault. Wasn't my fault. And how essentially the movie was taken away from him, at the same time it was taken away from Zack Snyder and given to Joss Whedon. We won't go into this with as much detail because we want to keep the show moving, but it's a big lesson in the screenwriter like has a certain amount of power until he or she doesn't. And, the studio, once again, he points out something that's fairly obvious, just like, when you studios, they need to keep the movie to a short run time. Other 2 hours that can show the movie in a bunch of put more showings in more theaters and make more money, because that's ultimately why the film is getting made. Yes, it's to make nerds happy. Yes, it's to tell a story, blah blah blah. But it's getting made. That's why they think people will see it. But it's getting made because it's going to make money, and it's going to make the most money if it can run the most times in theaters. If movies were acceptable at an hour length, they'd do that, because then they could show twice as many as they're already showing. So Chris Terrio is pointing that out, and he's also saying, now, when a studio has spent a bunch of money on CGI or stunts or action sequences, car chases, fight scenes, whatever, elements that are line items on a budget that have a sunk cost, what they're going to cut for time are not those CGI fight scenes, stunt choreography, car chases. It's going to be the character stuff, the one-on-one, the dialogue, the stuff that was much less expensive to shoot. And unfortunately, those are the bits that make a 3-hour movie make sense. So when we watch films like Justice League or any other films that seem like, what the hell happened with this story? Like, these characters have no motivations. It's sort of a reminder to go, well, whose fault is that? Because the audience just goes, boom, the movie's bad. They don't even know who to blame. They just go, the movie sucks, or something's missing, or it was boring, right? Or it seems silly. We, as film people, say, well, it starts with the screenwriter, right? Yeah. But even then, it's like, but it's the studio. The studio decides, depending on the amount of control, the studio decides what gets cut and what stays in. And in this case, with the Snyder Cut, it was cut a bunch of character stuff, cut a bunch of stuff that was cheaper to shoot, make this investment worthwhile, and which it ultimately wasn't.
Yeah, for sure. I would recommend this article to anybody who's interested in writing screenplays, because it really does show, like, something that we often forget is these are licensed characters, and you would think that the writer has like carte blanche to just do whatever they want. But the truth is they are hired by a studio that owns the rights to the characters. The studio calls the shots. And so you can turn in a million drafts that to you are all perfect. But if the studio hates every single one of them, then you're going to have to go back to the drawing board every time and eventually deliver something that they will accept. And that may mean dumbing down your vision, and it may mean walking away from your vision and letting somebody else dumb it down. But at the end of the day, it's this give and take. And so, like, I tweeted this week that I would love to write like a story about Robin and Batgirl. Like, I would love to see that as a film, like a coming of age thing. That'd be great. But at the end of the day, you have to stop and realize, like, okay, you wanted to be like I wrote that I wanted it to be like a crime, like a mystery story that's wrapped up in this coming of age romance. Okay, cool. That sounds great on paper, but all the studio would care about is, if I pitched that, is like, well, how many car chases? Well, how many set pieces? Well, how many big things can we put in a trailer?
Money on the screen.
Right. And so for me, like, just temper your expectations. It'd be great to be given those characters and say, write whatever you want, but it doesn't happen. Yeah. And I'd say it doesn't even happen at Marvel. Like, they don't let people just take things. Chris Terrio knows this. I can't wait for a few years to pass so he can tell us all about the rise of Skywalker and what a terrible experience that was. Right. Because again, the studio doesn't just hand over these characters to somebody and say, do whatever and walk away, unless you're Rian Johnson, I guess. but they have the final say, because they are your boss. Yep. And if they don't like it, they will find somebody to rewrite it, and you will get a credit, but it won't be your film. And then you'll end up in the same boat that Chris Terrio was, which is, I don't want my name on this film anymore. Yep. But you wrote most of it, but we changed all the good parts into stupid parts. And so, yeah, I highly recommend this, because it's not all like rainbows and unicorns. Hey, write a movie about Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. Cool. I can do whatever I want. No, you can't. You are beholden to your employer.
Yeah, exactly. And the person who comes out looking the worst in these two articles is, of course, Joss Whedon. And
Warner Brothers themselves.
If there's a single individual, it's Joss Whedon.
Yeah, for sure.
And, we don't have to go into this more because, it's already kind of plain to see, where he stands kind of in the news and everything. But, it's disappointing because he's sort of, with these projects, is kind of revealing himself to have been the cliched, angry, visionary director where, there's a part in the Ray Fisher article where I think it was sort of said make that suggestion, but wait and do it until Joss isn't mad. We can't make Joss mad. What is he, 3 years old? You can't make him mad.
Yeah.
It's silly.
There may be another article about some temper tantrums.
Wait a second. Are you looking at the rundown? What are you looking at? Oh, did I miss something? Okay, tell me which one you're referring to, because I can't.
Scott Rudin.
Oh, okay. This is the one I pulled up just to make sure. I was like, "What do you mean? Don't do that to me, Dustin. Surprise me like that." Yes,
surprise
article
segue.
on Deadline. Scott Rudin slammed as abusive, racist, and sexist by fellow True Grit EP Megan Ellison after Exposé. Megan Ellison is the founder of Annapurna, and I think she's the CEO, which is she's like a bit. Do you know Megan Ellison's thing? I think I can't remember what her father's name is, but her father's like a tech billionaire, and so she was like an heiress, I believe, of that money. God, I hope I have that right. This was in that book I got, The Big Picture, about the movies and studio system and stuff. But Megan Ellison is independently wealthy, and so she started Annapurna because she loves movies and she wants to make good movies, and she worked a lot with Sony. And what have you. So we've got this Scott Rudin, who is a very prolific and noteworthy producer, who's revealing himself to also be kind of a bastard. A
baby.
Yeah, and exactly. The tweet from her, it was a Hollywood Reporter article that was shared, and it says, even as other Hollywood bullies have been shamed or sidelined, the Uber producer behind The Social Network and Broadway's To Kill a Mockingbird has been given a pass and even lauded for his volcanic behavior. Now former employees are speaking out. So she retweets that and says, this piece barely scratches the surface of Scott Rudin's abusive, racist, and sexist behavior. Similarly to Harvey, meaning Weinstein, too many are afraid to speak out. I support and applaud those who did. There's good reason to be afraid because he's vindictive and has no qualms about lying. Well, that sounds terrible.
Yes, it does.
And it's one of those things, again, where we've got an industry full of powerful people, and it's surrounded by movies, by the way, where the story is power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. All those values about hey, be careful because, if you're a jerk, power will just enable you to be a jerk. And if you're not a jerk, power can tempt you to sort of become a jerk. So don't be a jerk. Those scripts are all over those people's desks. And it's just a testament that people like Scott Rudin probably don't read them themselves. Otherwise they'd know you can't behave like this. You can't treat people like this. You can't just go off in a temper tantrum when something doesn't go your way. You work with other people, and it speaks to the big issue within film and filmmaking about how there's no HR, and how it's just it's a gigantic 1099 gig economy, and there's no accountability for unprofessional behavior seemingly.
Yeah, we were talking about this recently at work because Hollywood just attracts a certain type of person, unfortunately, and maybe the arts do in general. It's people who have some issues, and what ends up happening is you end up with people with a lot of power, and they're not ready for that power. They can't handle that power. They certainly can't wield the power. Yeah. And so you end up with people like Scott Rudin, who has temper tantrums and throws things at his employees and treats them like garbage. And blackballs them after they leave him to go work for another studio, and he calls that studio and says, don't hire them, and like all of this stuff because he's vindictive and doesn't get his way all the time. It's essentially that he's just acting like a giant child. And and that's the worst thing, is to have a super wealthy child. And so
super wealthy child.
And that's exactly what he is.
Boss baby.
And, boss baby, if you will. Maybe Alec Baldwin himself is a boss baby, but
oh boy.
But the point is, like, he is not mature enough to wield that power. And I think what we're realizing in Hollywood is, and it's been a stereotype for as long as we can remember that film has even been around, is like the stereotype of the director who's like out there yelling at everybody and he's a jerk to everybody because he's the director and you better do what I say. And like, that's the stereotype. And the thing is, like, why did that become a thing? But that is the thing. And Scott Rudin's this super powerful producer, and he wields that power with like this I don't know, like French king mentality of like, well, off with his head. And if he won't work for me, he won't work at all.
Yeah.
And that type of behavior isn't appropriate in any business setting. And what we've forgotten is that Hollywood is a business, and you are a boss, and you cannot treat your employees that way. I don't care if you are like a small business, like a plumbing company, and you have one employee, or if you are a huge Fortune 500 company with millions of, you're Microsoft, right? Like, it doesn't matter. You cannot treat your employees in that way, and you cannot force them to work beyond what's reasonable in terms of hours and in terms of, performance. So the idea is, as bad as all the Me Too stuff was and all of that, there's still work to be done on that front. There's also still work to be done on this front, which is you got to get rid of these people who are wielding their power with a reckless kind of demolition kind of way, and like that it's just not appropriate. And I can guarantee you, if my boss started doing that tomorrow, there would be people going to HR about it. Yeah. So the only reason that these people are able to do that is because they are as powerful as they are, and there's nobody above them to hold them accountable. Yeah. And that's what we've got to do away with.
Yeah. It's a huge problem. Huge problem indeed.
Yeah.
One more article to reference. We won't really go through this because this, there's not much to say about it. But this from the New York Times. Will Smith production pulls out of Georgia, citing the state's voting law. There's voting law change in Georgia that some people or many people are seeing as voter suppression. Some people are saying it was what the law was before the pandemic. It's just kind of going back to kind of removing temporary measures that were put in place because of the pandemic, and people in Hollywood are mad. And so Antoine Fuqua and Will Smith are pulling their production out of Georgia for that reason. So just a little bit of quick economic news there.
Well, if I can touch that just for a second, because I'm in Georgia, and here's what bothers me about this is, look, I'm not going to make any statement about the bill itself, about what's going on. Doesn't matter. Yeah. To me, the point of the whole thing is, I am tired of Georgia being used, our workforce is being used as pawns in a political game. And that to me is dangerous. And that to me is inappropriate. We saw it with the heartbeat bill. We're seeing it now with this. Just because Georgia legislation, just because politicians, just because whoever is in power is doing some things that you don't agree with, I don't believe that gives you the right to take money out of the pockets of Georgia citizens who are working hard. The MLB All-Star game moved out of Atlanta because of this reason. And it's like, again, there are people who like already have been contracted to clean up the bathrooms and do all this stuff, and like these are hardworking people, and then there are restaurants who ordered extra food so that they could supply the rush that would be there at the All-Star game, and now all of a sudden like it's gone, and for what reason? It's just to send a message. So they've become a pawn in this game, and I don't believe that that's how we as a democracy, I don't believe that that's how we as a country should be dealing with problems. If we don't like a certain political action that's being taken, don't take it out on other people as a message to the people in charge. You take it out on the people in charge, and you do that. There's a number of ways that we've set up in our Constitution that can happen, and I don't believe that this is a good way to do that, because I believe it ultimately only hurts people. And if the people, let's just say, if the people at the very top are so selfish and don't care about the people in Georgia enough that they're willing to suppress votes, and they're willing to do that, if benefit of the doubt, if that's what they're doing, then they also don't care if you decide to start hurting other people and their livelihood. They don't care. And so they're not going to suddenly change their mind and be like, oh, okay, fine. And I said this about the heartbeat bill too. They're not going to suddenly change their mind because money is being taken out of other people's pockets, because ultimately they still have the same amount of money. And so that's what it boils down to. And anyway, the point is of the whole thing, regardless of the bill, I'm just tired of seeing Georgia used as a pawn in this war. And I wish that moving forward, if there is anything that Georgia does that the other side of the aisle doesn't agree on, that at least you just let people make movies. Like, for heaven's sake, just let people make movies. Yeah. For heaven's sake, just let people play baseball. It doesn't mean anything. That's entertainment. It's escapism. It's fun. Like, the last thing we need to be doing right now is removing fun and removing entertainment and removing things that illustrate to society how to be better people and what morality in our country is. That's what entertainment does, is it shapes that. And you're going to pull that out of even happening? It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, yeah. That's my soapbox. I'm done.
No, that's very true, and it's worth bearing in mind that it's not just about, hey, headline this, and hey, here's what's happening, and take notice. There's real world impact that's beyond, just the surface level of what these issues are. So, all right, let's go to break real quick. We'll come back, and I've got a few movies to talk about. We'll cram it into a short period of time if we can. Yeah, cool. All right, be right back. HooperCast Movie Hour. I'm gonna pull my laundry out real quick. Oh boy. Hey, back everybody in the HooperCast Movie Hour.
Yay.
Check us out on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, all those places. If you want to look at what is new this weekend on streaming, you can go to the show notes, the TV Guide article for April. Oh boy. Yeah, my voice is going, I think. My picks, of course, are this weekend on HBO Max. We've got Mortal Kombat coming out. Looks pretty awesome, or at least a lot of fun. I don't know about awesome, but people are excited. Seems like it'll be entertaining. Getting stabbed with frozen blood seems pretty cool to me. And I believe this weekend it looks like Rush is on Netflix. The Chris Hemsworth, Daniel Bruhl film about Formula One.
I saw that.
Yeah, I remember Rush. That was a good movie. Also an article there, if you're in Mobile, at the Crescent right now, where they are showing the film Minari, the Academy Award nominated Minari, and you could check it out if you want to go see it in a theater. Okay.
I recommend it.
Dustin recommends it. All right, We're going to talk about some movies real quick. I'm going to warm us up a little bit, Dustin. We're short on time because of me.
Yeah.
But let's start first with one of these films. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to talk about a film that was released on Netflix starring Rosamund Pike. It is called, I didn't tell you to start yet. What are you doing? Come back here. A film called I Care a Lot.
I know what you do here. Your hustle. Look at all these cash cows on your wall just leaking money into your account. But Jennifer Peterson, she's off limits. She has very powerful friends who can make life uncomfortable for you.
How uncomfortable are we talking?
Hello, Marla Grayson. I don't like you.
You only just met me. There's two types of people in this world. Predators and prey. I don't lose. I won't lose. I'm never letting you go.
Oh, you're in trouble now.
I am a fucking lioness.
All right, that's a little bit from the trailer for I Care a Lot. This is a Netflix film. You can also obviously find it on Netflix. And it's available. And I watched this a couple weeks ago, I think, at some point. Film stars Rosamund Pike, Peter Dinklage, Diane Wiest, Chris Messina, and it's a film about a terrible person doing terrible things, and it's a lot of fun. I think I gave this film, 3.5 stars. Rosamund Pike plays a state employee. I believe she's like a care administrator or something. I gotta be honest, I don't remember what her job title is, but what she essentially does is she's in charge of moving people who don't have next of kin or who can't care for themselves into care homes. But it's pretty much like a racket for her. Because then you get to like seize their assets and control their money, control when they get their medication. And then you're on their payroll because they have to pay the state and pay you for handling those services. So if you're a terrible witch like Rosamund Pike's character Marla is, you can target people. You can target otherwise independent elderly people and just convince a judge that you need to remove them from their homes, and then forcibly put them into senior care, dope them up on meds, sell their house, control all their assets, and then just kind of be on their payroll until they die. And then when they die, you get to replace them with somebody else. It's super fucked up, and she is really great in the film. I won't go into too much more because other channels, I'm sure, have talked about this ad nauseum. So I'll just tell you that if you thought about it and you're like, oh, should I check it out? I would. I think it's a fun watch. I think the setup and payoff is done well, and I think the characters are terrible people who are fun to watch and are spending the whole movie trying to screw each other over, and that's exactly what you want when the movie's full of bad people. Right. You just want to see them fail and suffer. So I don't have much more to say. That's I Care a Lot on Netflix, 3.5 stars. All right, this next one was very popular lately, and so again, we had some time off, so I was able to check it out. This next one is a documentary episode. Of course, this is on Hulu, and this is the much talked about New York Times. Is this going to full screen? The New York Times presents Framing Britney Spears.
She accepted that the conservatorship was going to happen, but she didn't want her father to be conservator. That was her one request.
And anytime there's that amount of money to be made, you have to question the motives of everyone close to that person.
Do they always have her best interest at heart?
Something is going on behind the scenes here.
I didn't understand what a conservatorship is, especially for somebody capable of so much that I know firsthand she's capable of.
Why is she still in this? Why is her dad making all of her decisions?
What do we want? Free Britney!
That is a bit from the trailer of New York Times Presents Framing Britney Spears. This is season 1, episode 6 of that series on FX. But I've only seen this one episode, and I'm sure many millions of people have also only watched the one episode. But again, could be worth checking out. So this episode is about the conservatorship of Britney Spears. Again, if you're at all familiar with this case, you know that that's essentially, honestly, it's very similar to I Care a Lot. Oddly, it's you have a situation where you are controlling someone's finances and assets because they are incapable of doing it themselves, and so of course, just like in Britney Spears' case, through a string of public meltdowns and stress over the custody battle over her children with her ex-husband and the umbrella incident, just really life bearing down on her. Britney Spears' father found a way to become a I almost said conspirator, a conservator over her estate, and a lot of people are becoming aware of this and wondering why. And you have to, whenever there's money involved, there's money to be made, like they say in the trailer, you need to question the motives of the people involved in such an arrangement. So it's a very infuriating documentary. You spend a lot of time sort of setting up sort of what the industry did to Britney Spears, how it unfairly judged her and many other women in music. The kind of degrading questions and coverage that she was subjected to, the bad way that she was painted just for being someone who wanted to execute a vision, for not being the things that suburban mothers wanted her to be, and also not being enough of the things that other people wanted her to be, and having to grow up like that, and how when she wanted to sort of, and how generous she was with the paparazzi and the press and the people who wanted to make money off of her, she was cool with that, and she tried to strike a balance and keep that ecosystem for those people going. And when it became too much because of personal struggles, press kind of turned on her, and she had to spend many years just sort of being painted as crazy Britney Spears. She's bald. She's hitting with the umbrella, and wow, she's crazy. And it was a big joke. It was a joke on Jeopardy. It made it onto game shows that she was crazy. I think Family Feud, actually. But like, it's horrible. And now the fact that she essentially lives under the control of someone else, and she's a full-blown adult who's capable of working and providing for herself, can't even control her own money, someone who right now refuses to work until the conservatorship is turned over to literally anyone else. She's not saying she's given up getting out of the conservatorship. She is basically now saying, I'll stay in the conservatorship. I just don't want my father to be a co-conservator. It's literally about him. And that's it's crazy. So if you have not seen that, I would check it out for sure.
Sweet.
All right, we got a little bit of time, Dustin, to carve out. I'm sorry, I meant to give us more, but
you're good.
I didn't. The next film we're talking about tonight, we both saw, is on HBO Max. You can see this right now still, although it's going to be leaving HBO Max soon, in favor of exclusively theaters. The film is Godzilla versus Kong.
We need Kong. The world needs him to stop what's coming. And this child, she's the only one he'll communicate with.
I knew that they had a bond. She had nowhere to go, so I made a promise to protect her. And I think that in some way, Kong did the same.
That's a little bit from the trailer of Godzilla vs. Kong. This is a new release. This is on HBO's on HBO Max and in theaters also. and it's new. And Dustin and I both saw it, so I have not seen King of Monsters. I've seen all the other films in this now universe, and so we're here to talk about it. I will tell you, I don't have many thoughts, Dustin. I think that I gave this film. I didn't rate the New York Times. Britney Spears, that was 5 stars. No big deal. I think I gave Godzilla vs. Kong 2.5 stars.
Okay.
I was entertained. You did? Okay.
Yeah.
I was entertained. I enjoyed breaking this film in on my new television. And visual effects were stunning. And it was great. And everything in between those visual effects and set pieces was super duper boring. Not to an embarrassing degree, but just to a degree. And that's pretty much how I felt about it. So I think that my quick recommendation is if you have HBO Max and you're bored, you want to watch something, check it out. It's fun. Is it going to be great? I mean, are you going to look at your phone a lot? Yeah, you are. I think you will, at least. What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I would say it's a fun movie. I don't know how much fun I actually had with it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching it, if only just to have watched it, but not necessarily because I was like, oh, yay, like cheering when things happen, or, oh, no, don't do that, Godzilla. Like, I didn't give it any of that. It was just kind of like, okay, I've seen it.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if I'd say it's fun, but it is a movie, and it is goofy enough that you can watch it with your brain turned off. And it is background noise if you wanted to do something else. But yeah, I think, obviously the main thing that people are here for is Godzilla versus Kong. You get a good bit of that in this, as opposed to some other versus movie like Batman versus Superman, where you only get that in like a few minutes. This does span the entire film, the Godzilla versus Kong conflict. It feels a little forced to me, though. Like, ultimately, most of these versus films are. It's like, what's the motivation of these characters to fight? Instinct. Okay, that's not interesting. You know what I mean? Like, there's just not much to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then in between all the fighting sequences, which I can really only think one is kind of cool, and the others are like, okay. In between all of that stuff is the human stuff, which is so boring that like Kyle Chandler has like two lines of dialogue in this film. Millie Bobby Brown, who, why even bring her back? She doesn't do anything except sneak into highly fortified military bases and like without a problem
and not use telepathy.
Yeah, just walking on in. Yeah, and then there's some really cringy things like the podcaster guy who's like, I'm a wacky podcaster, nobody knows who I am, and
someone says he stumbled right out of a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, I could see that. Like it's very much that type of character.
Yeah.
And then the dude from the Hunt for the Wilder People. Yeah. It's like, I'm here too, and it's just like, but why? What purpose do you serve? And so that's what really all of these characters are, is like, what purpose do you serve? Hey, look at you, evil man. What purpose do you serve?
Well, I'm evil.
I'm vaguely foreign and evil. And you know what I mean? Like, that's all there is to this.
Yeah.
And it's just so like, I don't know. It's just so boring. And then the main thing that like kept jumping out to me is all of the deductions that these people make. How could you possibly know what you're saying? This is a bit of a spoiler. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Whatever.
Yeah.
This is a mindless movie.
Do it, Dustin.
There's a moment where Kong. It's really laugh out loud funny. Kong finds a giant axe. And he sits in a throne, and you're like, oh, he's King Kong now. I get it. It's so stupid. Anyway, he puts the dang axe in a crevice that's perfectly shaped.
An axe-shaped crevice.
Who made this?
Well,
gorilla?
I wonder if I have a 1-year-old son, and even he'd be like, oh, this This is a puzzle.
Yeah, right.
This is a puzzle.
What is this? He puts it in there, and all of these scientist characters. So he puts it in there. It glows blue, and one of the science characters, I can't remember who it is.
The science characters.
Maybe it's Rebecca Hall. Maybe it's what's her face from Baby Driver. But one of them says it's charging. And I'm like, how could you possibly know that? It's just glowing blue. You don't know that it's collecting energy. How could you possibly know that?
Charging.
That
What if
makes
it's
no sense to
emitting
me.
poisonous gas? What if that's what blue light means down here?
You have no idea. You are in a topsy-turvy world.
You are shooting in the dark. That is speculation.
Yes.
You're supposed to be a scientist.
Correct. You also have like things like there's a moment where they find a room in this military base, this like super secret tech base, and there's a thing in the middle. I'm not going to spoil this one. A thing in the middle of the room, and there's like wire, like cables going all through this thing and like feeding into the rafters and whatever. And the podcaster character is like, it's feeding nano waves to telepathically across thing. And I'm like, how do you know?
Shut up.
I'm at work all day looking at cables, and I have to trace them. Like, and this is just an HDMI cable, and I'm like, where does this go? I don't know. I guess I have to figure it out. And this guy takes one look at this thing he's never seen before.
Yeah.
It is no recognizable frame of reference for what these cables are, and he's like, I know what they are. They're feeding telepathically to the. How could you know this? This makes no one's ever done this. It's stuff like that where I'm like, this is so dumb. And then there's
With
like
the spaceships that go to the center of the earth.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like all this stuff is just so weird to me. And then there's all these
spaceships that go to the center of the earth. But all we need is a crazy professor who also wants to go to the center of the earth and has written about it previously and maybe can learn to fly it like tomorrow.
And I wonder if his brother ever died doing this exact thing.
I'm looking for a professor who has a wound that will fit my specific needs for this exact mission.
Exactly. It's
fucking
so
kidding me.
Funny. And then you have like really dubious science, so they get to I'm sorry, I'm just gonna spoil this part too. Sorry. Okay. So they get to the center of the earth. How is there sunlight down there? How is there any light at all? Where is it coming from?
You know, it's like, okay, so is that supposed? Is like if you far away, is that the Earth's core we're looking at? And then if it is, it's like that's an awfully placid amount of really nice golden CGI sunlight to be the core of the planet, which you would think would be boiling over and incinerating and burning everything in this realm of monsters. But it looks like a really nice place. It looks like New Zealand, and it looks like a really nice place. It looks like that kid from the Wilder People. That's like where he lives.
Right, exactly. And then you have like this moment. It's so goofy. Look, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how science works, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't work like this. That a giant lizard can shoot atomic breath into the earth and burrow a hole just completely through to the center of the earth. And Kong is in the center of the earth walking, and the atomic breath comes up from his feet where he's standing. Yeah. Right? So Godzilla's here on top of the earth. Kong's inside the earth, and Kong jumps into the hole and somehow comes out. And I'm like, first of all, how long did that take you, my friend? Because I guess the implication is that there's one of those wormhole deals that they went into, but I'm like, so are those naturally occurring then? Like you can just burrow like if make a hole and there's one?
Wasting our time looking for those things in outer space. All we have to do is drill to the center of the earth. We'd find one right here in the middle of the fucking planet.
There it is. Right, exactly. So it makes no sense that there would just be a wormhole there that he jumps into and ends up on. Because I'm like, okay, if there's no wormhole, how long does it take you to go from the center of the earth to the crust?
Yeah.
Like to the surface, how long does that take? And also, how does gravity work? Because you're standing and then you jump down into the hole, but somehow come up from the ground. It makes no sense. I don't get it.
No.
but again, it's just one of those movies where you have to just shut off your brain and be like, giant monkeys fighting lizard. And that's fine. And yeah, whatever. But like, yeah, I feel like you could just trim this down and just show me the kaiju fights. Yeah. And I would be like, that's a more effective film.
When I was a kid, I used to record movies onto VHS tapes, you know? And so after a while, I did that with fight scenes. I had like a fight scene tape. I don't know if you had one of these.
I mean, I recorded things, but I don't think I ever recorded just specific scenes.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm sure it was a habit in the 90s and 2000s for people to record other kinds of scenes onto VHS. But the kinds of scenes that was all about, I mean, those are nice
like
too.
Jackie Chan adventures fighting.
It was fights. And so you take a movie where it's like, oh, okay, so the exposition of the story is really boring, but these fights are cool. This would have made it onto my reel here of fight scenes worth exploring, but movies not worth sitting through.
Right.
That's how I can sum up Godzilla versus Kong.
It's a really goofy, mindless movie that has some decent set pieces, but don't expect those set pieces to make any sort of sense. They just exist, and it's just a cartoon. Yeah, exactly. All right, I got one more movie I want to endorse real quick. Perhaps if you do watch Godzilla vs. Kong and you know, whatever. So I was on Disney Plus over the weekend, as I'm apt to do with my kids, and I came across a film that I thought was worth revisiting. So Dustin can't hear the trailer music right now, so he's just gonna have to wait. Well, he won't actually. I'll say the title. The film is the 1999 classic Inspector Gadget.
But Claw
classic
will try to destroy him.
Greetings, Inspector.
Get ready for the only hero with gizmos up the wazoo. Disney's Inspector Gadget.
All right, so that trailer is hot garbage, but I gotta say, this film holds up pretty well, I think.
Okay.
Inspector Gadget came out in 1999, starring Matthew Broderick as the titular Inspector Gadget. And in this film, he's a mall security guard. No, he's not even a mall security guard. He's like a lab security guard named Jonathan Brown, and he like creeps on Dr. Brenda Bradford on these cameras all the time, and her and her dad are working on her dad's like the priest from the Patriot, and they're trying to they work in like robotics and cybernetics, and they're trying to make like human appendages for some reason, and Dr. Claw comes in there, played by Rupert Everett, who's just chewing the crap out of the scenery in this movie, comes in, breaks in with all these little like battle bots looking like bomb disposal looking robots, takes the foot, murders her father, kills him, and Jonathan Brown pursues him, even though he's off duty, crashes his car, which was totally his fault. It was a one-car accident.
Yep.
So Rupert Everett lights a cigar, throws it on his car, and tries to kill this person. Gets his hand crushed by a bowling ball that falls out of nowhere. Becomes Dr. Claw, and then while Matthew Broderick is under the knife, the mayor, played really well by Terrio, comes in and says, "Hey, all the Gadget program that you've been working on, Dr. Bradford, let's put it into this guy because he was trying to save your dad." And she just like wants to get the robot program not like sunk. And Brenda Bradford's like, okay. So without this man's consent, they fill his body full of like tools and software and chips and slinkies and like rubber duckies and all this bizarre bullshit they show you putting in his body. Just squeaky, and they dip it below like into his gown. It's like, where's that gonna go? Anyway, just trying to explain the physics of of how all this stuff stays in his body.
Fits. Yeah.
He wakes up from a massive coma. He's Inspector Gadget, has no choice, has a good attitude about it, learns to be a cop. And then he's like this big mascot publicity stunt until he starts investigating the Bradford case and runs in with Dr. Claw. And the crown jewel of this film is the fact that they make an evil Robo-Gadget who is also played by Matthew Broderick, who has like ventriloquist dummy looking teeth and who talks like this and does like like little affectation. And there's a fair amount, you can go on YouTube and look at this, if there's a fair amount of, they just tell him, hey, just go destroy the city.
Yeah, I remember a lot. I was going to ask if this was the one with the evil Matthew Broderick, and so I'm glad that it is.
And this is about where the encode finished on the videos. Luckily, I was finished reviewing the film, so check out Inspector Gadget on Disney Plus if you want a look at a pretty entertaining film that holds up from the late 90s. Other than that, thanks for listening. Join us next week, and pretty soon, in 2 weeks, we'll talk about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series finale. Cheers.